What's going on, guys? It is Philmington, and today we're going to be talking about the comp trap. And this is something that I see happen a lot. It's going to hopefully help you as a seller, not jip you out of an additional 5 to 20%, but also to help you as a buyer and not get taken advantage of. And this is something I see happen with sales, outright sales, as well as RASs. Some groups now call them lines or crowd funds. But basically, whether it is a sale or a RAS, I see sellers set prices that are based on a comp that could be misleading. Sometimes it's even a cherry-picked comp or an outdated comp. But hopefully what I'm about to teach you guys today will help you going forward. Some of you guys might already employ these practices. Sometimes with modern cards that have a lot of transaction volume, cards that are very popular and highly sought after, that aren't too expensive, the previous 90 days worth of sales data is the most important thing. In some cases, the only thing that matters. But with more rare cards, short printed cards, higher valued cards where there aren't as many data points looking back 90 days, this is where alternative methods of evaluating card prices comes in handy. But the issue is that when buying on eBay or when buying online, the eBay trail that goes back 90 days is going to be often the most convenient and accessible means to get pricing information. And that's when we're making buying decisions or even selling decisions as well. So I figured first I would share my thoughts on how I approach card valuation. And a recent example that I saw in early April, somebody was trying to sell a card and then I noticed what he was doing. I checked comps. By the time I could have responded, comments were removed from the post, I believe, and the sale was already made. Whether the seller knowingly knew that he misled the buyer, I don't know about that. I'm not even sure what the final price that was paid for that item was. But it was a pretty large transaction. Again, it was on Facebook, and it involved a 2013 Topps Update PSA 10 Nolan Arenado Target Red. And the seller cited comps on eBay of, I think there were two recently sold items that were $1,300. Then he quoted a price a little bit higher than that because for those cards that had sold for $1,300, the original asking price was a little bit higher. So he decided to go in between. And he said he was looking for $1,500. He might have even said $1,500 or best offer. But here's the problem with that valuation. It has a higher PSA 10 population than Christian Yelich's Target Red, and Arenado is a less desirable player. We could argue who's better, who's going to have the better career, who's going to make it to the Hall of Fame all day. But if you look at prices from 2013 Topps Update flagship, as of the last 5-6 months or greater, Christian Yelich has been outperforming him with all parallels. The one that's the most important is the base card, because that's the one that's going to have the most sales. The base card is really the one that all the parallels are derived off of. In this case, Christian Yelich, he's never had a Target Red PSA 10 that has sold for over $1,100. I know this because I sold them for less than that. And, you could play the same game saying, well, it's a Target Red, it doesn't have a lot of comps. Maybe that's part of the issue. But even if you were to adjust the Yelich card upwards and say $1,000 or $1,100 for the Yelich PSA 10 Target Red isn't enough, so you adjust it up a bit. At the time, Nolan Arenado had a PSA 10 version of his camo parallel, numbered to 99, which has a lower print run and a lower PSA 10 pop. You could even look at PSA 9 sales of the key rookies from 2013, 2014 across camo and Target Red to see that for most people, most of the time, the camo parallel is going to be more desirable. $1,100 or best offer, that's where that Arenado camo PSA 10 was listed at. Didn't sell, but that would have been the ultimate ceiling, you would think, for that Target Red Arenado in a PSA 10. But realistically, it's going to be quite a bit less just because the camo didn't sell at that $1,100 price point. So what's my valuation for the Arenado Target Red PSA 10? It's not worth more than $900. And for all the reasons that I mentioned, but also I've always valued Target Reds at around 2 times gold. The gold parallel that's numbered to roughly 2013 for that year. My valuations for golds, which have more recent sales because it's a more common card, are actually in line with comps too. Arenado PSA 10 is gold's probably around 450, which means based on 2 times, I have my reds at about 900. Yelich, same thing, 725 is where I see his gold. He had a huge comp recently, so it's going to be below that huge recent comp. But 725 for golds, 1450, which would be times 2 for the red. So even though I underestimated the initial value of the PSA 10 Target Red Yelich, Arenado is still going to come well below that. Looking at multipliers across all the parallels, most importantly, the base. All right, so base PSA 10s right now, Arenado about 110 maybe. Yelich, a lot of comps there too, probably around 180. So, you're hopefully you guys are starting to see the fuller picture. Just looking at 2 comps, seeing that they sold for $1,300. It doesn't give you the full story. You really have to look into other data points, and you have the luxury of doing so when there are so many other parallels with many more recently sold comps. The bottom line here, guys, is don't fall victim to the 90-day comp trap, and use additional techniques to appraise cards, especially the illiquid ones. Short-term patterns, when there's not a lot of data points, are exactly what I describe them as. They're short-term in a lot of cases. Smart money is always going to find its way around. Remember that. Smart money will always find its way around. There's a lot of short-term volatility in the markets today. The hobby is no exception, and it can make things even more confusing if you're just relying on the comps from the past 90 days. Because mid-April's average sales for a lot of cards are going to be very different than mid-March's average sales. And trust the multipliers. If you have to, seek out older data. TerraPeak is a great source. PWCC has a free pricing tool. You just have to be a member. It's going to show you all of the eBay auctions outside of PWCC. And I guess, it might take longer than 3 months for prices to adjust to where they should be. Sometimes you have to wait for that whole data trail to go away. It could be longer than 3 months. You really have to use all tools available to you guys. And if you're one that frequents razzes, then I would urge you to be even extra cautious, because I see sellers use these tricks over and over again. Probably 25 to 50% of all razzes I see, the prices are materially above what I would consider fair valuation. And it's not always the card that's most appropriately priced that gets filled the fastest. Don't just judge a line by how fast it's filled. It's not even how hot the card is. A lot of the times it has to do with the person that's razzing. People trust that person. People know that person. That person's good at marketing his own razzes. So it's just something that I noticed I wanted to throw out there. They have a lot of regulars in those Facebook groups that they rely on. And with razzes, I know you're going to be paying a little bit more because you might not be able to afford the whole thing. So you might consider a small premium be okay because of that. And also thinking, it requires some work from the razzer, even though it's still work to sell outright. The razzer has to pay for a video runner, but still, most of the time you're paying these guys through PayPal, FNF, or Venmo. So there's immense benefits to the seller just in that. So don't think that, you have to do the seller a service by agreeing to whatever price that he puts out there. If you overpay on 10 straight lines, it's the same thing as overpaying for one full card, assuming that each line is, 10 spots, 10% each. So hopefully this can help you as a buyer, but also as a seller as well. Again, don't leave that extra money on the table. Take advantage of what that card is really worth. All this talk about multipliers, but what are the multipliers? Well, shared some anecdotal stuff with Topps Flagship, but my bread and butter has always been Bowman Chrome autographs, and this is the stuff that I really know. When I got back into the hobby in 2014, I have studied it, I have followed it, I have measured it, and I'm going to share some of my thoughts on what those Bowman Chrome autograph multipliers could be. But first of all, some context. Juicer, as he is well known on Blowout. This is Josh from PC Sports Cards. He's moved on to bigger and better things, but back over 5 years ago, he shared his thoughts on a general framework for the multipliers for Bowman Chrome autographs. At the time, it was much more simple. There were fewer variants of the different refractors. There were fewer new or novice collectors coming into the hobby. And what he provided was a very nice rubric, which a lot of people agreed with and used and referenced for a number of years afterwards. Flash forward to January 2019, where Aaron from Slabstocks actually pushed forward his proprietary Bowman Chrome autograph multiplier scale, also on Blowout forums. This was something that might have been very helpful for its time, but it was a little bit flawed when I looked at it, in that he had greens as being more valuable than blues. He had purples way more valuable than regular refractors, numbered to 499. He gave a little bit too much credence, I think, to shimmers and waves as well. I didn't really agree with a whole lot of his assumptions. But having said that, Slabstocks has done some great work for the hobby. And a lot of his other multipliers that I definitely do agree with. For instance, he has one where he talks about graded cards versus raw cards, BGS 9.5, Black Label, BGS 10, PSA 10, all of this stuff versus a raw card. And some of these other measures I find to actually be pretty accurate even today. For Bowman Chrome first autographs, I don't think we as a collective community of hobby participants have anything right now, any multipliers that are extremely accurate, are relied upon, that are trusted, that make sense. So that is where I am trying to fill a void, actually. Just to be clear, what I'm about to show you guys, it's a draft. I'm hoping to finalize this 1 month from this video being published. So that would be May 28th. I'm hoping to formalize this on Instagram. Tomorrow I plan on showing it to some members of the Bowman Chrome Facebook group. A lot of these guys live, breathe, and sleep Bowman Chrome cards just as much, if not more, than me. So I'm looking forward to getting some feedback, incorporating the feedback into a more finalized version. This is going to be a scale that applies to all first Bowman Chrome autograph cards, not just current prospects, but also current veterans. But again, first prospect autograph cards, Chrome cards. It's based on real sales data, which includes thousands of data points. It includes experience. It includes trends and patterns that I've observed over the last 6 years. So this is intended to be a general framework. There's going to be players. There's going to be examples of sales that'll fall on the high side or low side of what I've shown here to be the midpoints of each of those refractors. Any given set, actually any given variant, might have a high or a low standard deviation from the mean. What I actually observed is that the standard deviation was higher for waves, for shimmers, for reds, as well as supers, which I've kind of showed the range there. I didn't think it was sensible to just put a midpoint for those just because that range is super wide. Personally, with all of these newer parallels or even the manufactured parallels, the waves, the shimmers, these are going to be probably the most volatile and likely to evolve within the next 6 months to 2 years. So if at some point this scale is out of date, it'll probably be partially because of those manufactured parallels. With the really rare stuff, like the superfractors, like the red refractors, to a lesser extent, probably the orange refractors as well, you're gonna see a greater variance across sales. And a lot of the time it'll be based on the player. Ronald Acuna, Juan Soto, Mike Trout, they're going to see higher multipliers generally versus the more common type players, the ones that nobody's heard of, or even the run-of-the-mill veterans. So again, guys, this is a draft. Feedback is welcome. I'm hoping to publish this 1 month from today. That's May 28th. I'm going to be gathering feedback through here, through other means as well. And once I complete it, I will date it, because I think the date is very important. I will try to attach that appropriate context to it as well, with disclosures, this is a general rule, yada, yada, yada. And to conclude this video, this isn't a means for me to push certain parallels, for me to artificially inflate the values of certain cards, sets, or parallels. This is really to provide the hobby with more information so they can make more informed decisions. You know, I don't expect to own this responsibility more than once, sort of like with Juicer, Josh. He did this long ago. He moved on to bigger and better things. He doesn't have time to do this. Aaron from Slab Stocks, he's involved in multiple different sports. He's doing a lot of podcasts. He doesn't have time to do this and keep it up to date. I just figured that I'm a very baseball-oriented collector, investor, flipper. This fits right into my wheelhouse. A lot of people actually already rely on me for this type of information. So why not formalize it and make it a little bit more public? All right, guys. Hopefully you liked what you saw. Like, comment, subscribe. Philmington out.